The following is a Castwave Studios production.
This is JediAmanda with Beyond the Game, and today, my guest is...
Tony Manfredonia.
He's here with us today as a guest, watching WMGSO, that's a mouthful, the Washington Metropolitan Gamers Symphony Orchestra, as he's going to see us debut his suite, Kharon's Crypt, with choir.
Yes.
It was already debuted in Wales.
It was in Wales, yeah.
Okay.
Without choir.
Yes. So when I mean debut, I'm like, well, there was a choir, it's already happened.
This is sort of like version 2.0. This is kind of like the revised, revisited version.
Bonus tracks.
Bonus tracks, exactly.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're doing this right before a performance, so I'll try to get to the fun parts. So what inspired you to want to compose for video games?
Yeah, that's a crazy story. So it was more so, I was in school for just composition, just to write music for like live performers. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine, he was also a composition major, his brother needed some extra help with writing music for games. He was like, can you just like help me arrange some tracks? Like, he was a fellow composer. I was like, sure, what the heck, like, why not? I mean, I grew up with video games, and I grew up loving game music, like Banjo-Kazooie's, like, and Majora's Mask, you know.
The good
True
ones.
Yeah, the good ones, yeah, right. You know, so it was just sort of like I was just helping him out. I didn't do any, like, production, just more so arranging, like, through Sibelius and stuff, and through notation software, but after a little while, that got my foot through the door, that I was like, you know, I kind of want to start doing some of my own, did game jams and all sorts of things, and really fell in love with it. So I think game music's always been a special place in my heart, and it wasn't until I was already kind of writing music for other things that I decided, you know what, I'm going to try this out. I just kind of rolled with it.
So how did you find WMGSO?
Yeah, I found WMGSO through a friend who lives in New Jersey, who went to MagFest, who told me about you guys, and I said, well, you know, I'm writing this. I was already writing the orchestral suite for Kharon's Crypt, and I was like, what the heck, maybe they'd want to perform it. So I found like the submission page, and I literally just submitted it, because I was like, you know what, I want to get this out there, kind of with the idea of, I would love to have like the music almost be a part of the marketing campaign for the game, since the game's not out yet at the time of this interview.
Pretty smart.
You know, it's kind of just like, it was just sort of a very organic, I found out about you and I wouldn't just submit it. I mean, there wasn't anything special otherwise, truly.
Okay, well, I mean, it seems to all boil down to MagFest. That's where we
meet
MagFest
everybody.
Seems
to be it.
Well, you should go sometime if you haven't.
I know. Where is it?
It's in, oh my God,
I should know this.
Not Baltimore, it's,
nearby.
Yes, National Harbor. We have our camera person reminding me.
That's fine.
I've been going for like 5 years. I should remember.
Yeah, no, I would love to go. Oh,
it's a fun time. All right. So, what was the first instrument you mastered?
First instrument I mastered. That's a.
I guess which one?
Yeah. So really, my voice. I mean, because when I was I'm a baritone or a baritenor or whatever you want to call it. High baritone. It was in college where they required an instrument. So even though I was for composition, they were like, well, you need a designated instrument. And I was singing all through high school, doing musicals and all that stuff. That was sort of like my primary instrument. And I also learned piano over the years, which was my primary, but then that kind of became secondary.
Yeah.
So I'm mainly a singer, play piano, and now I'm actually learning the organ as I work as a music director at a church. They're like, well, we'd love you to do this, but we need you to play the organ. So over the last 3 years, I've been learning the organ as I go.
Okay.
And I'm feeling very comfortable with that now.
So,
Not mastered. Just comfortable.
Comfortable. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Right.
Well, so what's your least favorite instrument to write for?
You know, I don't know if I have a least favorite one to write for, but I find the most challenge with the brass instruments.
Okay.
Only because they're very foreign to me. I've never played one. I've played a woodwind. I've played saxophone a little bit. I've sung. I've been around enough string players to like ask them enough questions. Brass instruments are just, I'm always a little bit cautious with them. I'm always like opening a bunch of references to make sure that nothing goes wrong. You know, I don't want to make them angry. So I would say any of the brass instruments is probably the more challenging. I don't really have a least favorite. I know that doesn't answer your question.
No, but you know what? Answer however you want. Like you could be like, I love all instruments, and be like, okay.
I kind of do. Marimba's fun to write for. But
Okay.
anyway, yeah.
All right, fair enough. Your favorite genre of video games?
Action RPG. I would say, I mean, and I kind of put like Legend of Zelda in that genre. So like,
Okay.
maybe it'd be easier just to say like games like The Legend of Zelda, games like Elder Scrolls, like Morrowind was one of my favorite games. So like the heavy RPG elements, with also like the quality combat and puzzle solving, I think are like hands down my favorite.
Yeah.
Any of the Elder Scrolls games really have been like,
Okay.
I'll play them. I mean, my playtime on Skyrim is, I probably even shouldn't say it. It's like, I don't want my wife to know how many hours I put into that game. That was
And they
before
just
we
keep-
met.
And they just keep remaking Skyrim, so it's never, you'll just
Yeah, I
gonna
know,
keep
it'll be
compounding
eternal,
hours.
right.
Oh my god, jeez. Alrighty, so let me jump back to some composition stuff.
Sure.
Your favorite key to compose in?
G flat. I know that's, everybody hates that, like orchestras and concert bands especially would like not be thrilled with that, but G flat is so warm. It's just hands down G flat. If more people liked it, I would do it more often.
Okay.
But only because of how many flats there are. The key signature is a little bit daunting, but
I mean, it's an adventure. It's
right.
fine.
Timbrely, it's a beautiful sound. So
Yeah.
G flat.
Okay, alright, great. So, what struggles did you have to overcome to be able to compose as a freelancer?
Being able to sacrifice time doing other things I enjoy. So like actually having time to play games,
Yeah.
I kind of had to put that slightly aside in order to really maximize the amount of time like working as a freelancer, because it's not your typical 9 to 5. There's a lot of just networking, there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of things that happen at very random hours of the day. Phone calls, emails, those types of things that I kind of had to just be okay with. I'm probably never going to be able to play like 80-hour JRPGs like I
Yeah.
used to, you know? But that's okay. You know, I think there's so much reward in doing the freelancing that it kind of makes up for it.
I was gonna say, you might be composing for one of those 80-hour
Right, exactly. You know, so
it's like playing, but you know.
That's the dream, at least.
Okay. Dreams are still valid. Like, hey. Okay. So, how many rejections have you gotten?
If I were to count the number of rejections, it would take a long time. A lot. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
It is a dog-eat-dog industry. I've gotten rejections from competitions. I've gotten rejections for college auditions. I've gotten rejections from games I've, in a sense, applied for by like sending demo tracks and stuff. And they say, well, we found someone else. You know, and it's one of those things that you can't, I couldn't let it, initially I was letting it kind of eat away at me,
Yeah.
but I've learned that it's not really ultimately the quality. It's just, it may not be fitting what they're looking for, you know? That doesn't mean I don't want to keep growing. Doesn't mean I don't want to keep getting better. But there's been enough rejections where I've learned to just accept them as rejections and not as a determining factor of my skill level. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So, how many years did it take before you composed for your first video game?
Yeah. So if you consider the thing I did in college, like my friend saying, hey, arranging, that would be like 1 year into like actually writing music. So that was, but
Okay.
that game didn't really do so hot. I'm just going to leave it nameless.
I mean, it happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. But it was 2 years after that I landed like my first solo game. And again, and I've been telling this to the other orchestra members, that like the first 3 paid games that I got actually never came out. Like the development just kind of fell flat.
Yeah.
Again, I'll leave them nameless, but so that one was 3 years into kind of really writing for games. Then 2 more after that also never came out. And it was kind of a bummer. So Kharon's Crypt really is like the first big commercial release that I've had.
Yeah.
But along the way, I've worked on a number of games. I guess really the first one that came out was Y2K, a postmodern RPG. I did some lyrics and some additional composition on that. I wasn't the composer. That was someone else. I just did like a few extra tracks for them.
Yeah.
Additional composition is what I'm kind of credited as.
Okay.
So that I worked on that about three years into my career, if you want to call it that.
Gotcha. So, my orchestra had a few questions.
Yes.
And The arrangers like to discuss this.
For sure.
Sibelius, I'm probably saying that wrong.
You're saying it right.
Sibelius versus Finale versus Dorico.
Dorico. Now, I've heard a lot of people say great things about Dorico. I can't speak on Dorico's behalf.
Okay.
But if we're going to leave it the dynamic duo of Sibelius and Finale, Sibelius all the way. In fact, plug in a little tutorial series here. I'm planning on doing a how to compose in Sibelius, like, exponentially fast kind of tutorial.
Okay.
Like the secrets of just cranking music out by just barely even touching your mouse and just using your QWERTY keyboard as your notation.
Oh, they would love that.
So I'm going to be digging into that soon.
Okay.
Sibelius all the way, 100%.
See, I'm MuseScore because money.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with MuseScore.
I
have a
like
couple
it.
students who use it and they love it. So
Yeah. All right. So they want to know, do you have any advice with deadlines regarding music?
Always give yourself more time than you think. For example, I'm about to work on a new game called, well, they didn't announce it yet, so I'm going to keep that silent.
But you're working on a game,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
working on a game. I'm working on a game that they will be having in. They initially wanted like a March deadline for me, and I said, trust me. Like, can we please push it to like April or
Yeah.
May? Just because things happen, whether it's technology, whether it's creativity, whether it's life, like you got to move or something. You know, things happen. So always push it. My rule of thumb is always 2 months further than you initially think.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. All right.
Give yourself more time than you need.
So the last question before we dive into, wrapping this up.
Yeah.
How different is it to be composing music that will be played by a digital orchestra compared to composing for a live orchestra?
That's the big question, and I'll keep it short.
Sorry.
The best rule of thumb is to treat them exactly the same. And that's people might disagree with me, but if you're using virtual instruments that are samples of live musicians and like Spitfire, 8DO, East West, the high quality samples, if you orchestrate it as though you're orchestrating it for a real orchestra, the level of mixing you're going to have to do is going to be so seamless because it's just going to translate very effectively. You may have to pan things a little, like you may want to, I may want the basses and cello a little bit more center because when you hear it on headphones, you want the center of the bass and stuff. Those little things are tiny tweaks, but generally, treat them exactly the same. Treat them exactly the same.
Gotcha. All right. So if we were on the internet and the internet was endless, what types of social media would we find you on? It's time to plug your stuff.
Sure. So I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, and I just started a Facebook page. Just search Tony Manfredonia on any of those. It should come up. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, SoundCloud. But my username is amanfro1, the O being a 0. That was when I was still called Anthony, hence the A. So it's AMANFR01 is like my username. But just search Tony Manfredonia. You'll find me. That'll be the first one that comes up.
Okay.
There's not many of me out there, so.
Everyone, please, if you got the time, and you'll have the time, check out Kharon's Crypt. It's super awesome. Can't be here for the concert. I'm sorry. You're just having to see this interview. All right. This has been Amanda with Beyond the Game with Tony Manfredonia. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.